This is Steve.
And this is Shawn.
Welcome to Acro Media's High Five.
So, Steve, what are we going to talk about?
We're going to be talking about migration.
Migration?
Migration.
Like this is our National Geographic episode?
The birds are coming from the north to the south. But in this case, we're talking about data.
Data migration.
Absolutely.
Okay.
From, I guess in this case, one platform to another.
Mm-hmm. It's actually pretty much the same.
Yeah. We probably have like that
when
parallel.
your old platforms got shitty and there's no food anymore left and you have to go to a new platform.
Yep.
You know.
The specific instance with food, at least, right? But no, let's talk a little bit like maybe let's take your definition of what is a migration.
Okay, so a migration is the data that is moving over. It's not the new platform. It's not a redesign. It's not any of that stuff. It's okay, we have a whole bunch of products, orders, blog posts, users, stuff that's inside your site, basically. It's inside the computer, you know, and it has to go to whatever your new platform is. Maybe it's just an update to a new version of the platform that's not, completely compatible, or it's you're moving to a completely new system, and you need to get all that stuff over, because you can't just have your customers and be like, oh yeah, we don't have all your old stuff anymore. Like, I don't know, make a new account or something. I mean, occasionally that happens, but you really don't want to do that.
Sure. Why do you think a lot of people get mixed up with the word replatforming and migration? You hear migration and you think it means like,
because you usually have to do
build,
both
right?
of them at the same time.
Okay.
Right? Like if you replatform, you got to get the data over there. So there's a migration happening. But so people think that they're one and the same. Like, oh, I'll just migrate to this new platform. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you can move all your data over there, but you probably need to make a design for it and set it up with all your customizations and do all this other kind of stuff. You can't just be like, data there, done.
And migration, at least in a lot of conversations I've had, the kind of the ignorance around it is that it's straightforward. You can kind of just be like, and migrate, and it happens.
Yeah. Well, we gave it a nice word, migrate. Well, just do the migrate.
Yeah.
Sounds easy, right? And the problem is even if you're going from like e-commerce to e-commerce, the data isn't always the same. Like an order isn't even an order. Like, how are the line items stored? How do coupons get added to it? Do you have the same coupons in the new system and the old system? Are discounts different? Like, it's all these pieces, that have to match up. And it, even though they're very similar, it's not the same. Do your SKUs match up? But maybe in one system, SKUs have to be unique. In another system, they don't. So what if you have two of the same type? And then they move in, there's an error. How do you deal with that error? What do you do? So there's all these little quirks that make it a lot more complicated.
And the thing that's kind of always gotten me is, you're in a migration, you're talking about like, okay, you've outgrown this previous platform, but you need to bring in the data that you've accumulated this whole time. And the situation is you're trying to like match up what you have with this new platform, but the thing about matching it up is like, how do you even have the expertise to know what you're matching up? Do you know what I mean? Like, like for myself, like if I'm running a business and I have all this data, I'm going to look at this and I'm going to understand what data I want to bring over, but I'm going to have no clue how to match it up with the new system.
It's quite difficult because you need some knowledge of the old system, some knowledge of the new system, and some knowledge of how the business is run. So you kind of need, you yourself need to provide some information as like the business owner or the manager or something, and then you need knowledge from the firm that's doing the migrate to have kind of knowledge of both systems of this is stored like this in this system, so this is how it gets translated to the other system, and then you to be there to be like, okay, this is how I use it, so this is the way, because maybe you're taking something that it can't be quite moved over. You're like, I use it in this fashion. We're like, oh, well, this is the similar functionality in the new platform. Or occasionally it might be like, it doesn't do that, or the new platform is like, well, actually it does this new thing. So the old way you did it, we shouldn't do that anymore. We should do new stuff. And there's a lot of that, which makes it, trickier than just, put 100 things in. Sometimes like a user is the easiest thing because you take an email and a password. That's all very straightforward. You put it in, whereas it's like all the customization stuff you've done. You have all these products, with 10 different options and stuff. How do they move over?
So why don't we talk a little bit then about what are kind of like the reasons you do migration, and then based on those reasons, what is actually kind of like your next step, if that makes sense. So let's say you've outgrown your commerce platform. You've gone from like a SaaS-based platform, and now you're ready to be like, I need to get into something different in which my data isn't just housed in this one piece. I want it to be in a couple of other services. Why would I even first off be in that situation, and then what do I do?
Yeah. I mean, you're in that situation because something has changed and the platform doesn't work for you. And that can be a number, like you said, you can outgrow it, or it can also be one where maybe the platform you were on, it's not supported anymore. It's shutting down. The company doesn't support it right now or anymore. They've gone away, or it's an old version that they've deprecated. So you might be forced to move as well. But for some reason, your current platform is not suitable, and you need to go to a new platform. And there is the option of maybe we just start the new platform and we add everything in from scratch. Unless you're really new or very small, that's probably not going to cut it.
No, I can see that for sure. And so in this case, you're going to you understand that you need to be matching up, data for data. What's kind of the technology behind that? Like, I know we've built migrations from a bunch of other platforms to Drupal. What would go into like creating a migration path, or if that makes sense?
It's a little different for every platform, but essentially what you do is you say, okay, take these, all this data, it's a number of fields, like, order number, things like that, and match them to an appropriate field in the other system. Although oftentimes in between you have to do basically what are called transformations. So you can't literally copy the data from one to the other. You have to do something to it. Like if we're saying, okay, these have categories and then these have categories, but we can't just be like, put it in shoes and shoes. We have to like, okay, well, what's the category ID for shoes and match that up. And so you have to have this data transfer layer in the middle. And sometimes that can be a bit difficult if not everything can be pulled out of a system or put into a new system. Maybe if it's like you said, a SaaS platform, they might only export so much of the data, right? And so maybe they don't export like the IDs of categories and stuff. So you have to do more manual work to get it through, or like say they don't.
Or you have to build some sort of software that's going to assign it an ID.
Yeah, you have to determine it, and you have to say, okay, match the text and put them all together and give them an ID and move them over and that kind of stuff. Or, lots of times, orders, customers, that kind of thing is exported, but not discounts and coupons and stuff, because those are more complicated. And so you only get parts, and the other parts you have to recreate manually and then match them back up, and you can get all these sort of little difficulties.
Got it. And the one thing that we haven't talked about yet, though, is in many cases you have this legacy piece of software, maybe even something you've outgrown, and so you realize you need to re-platform, but maybe you can also consider, can you just integrate with that new platform and keep that legacy piece of software or legacy technology?
Yeah, with a legacy one, that can depend. If it's not supported, usually you have to move away from it. But if it's a thing where maybe you've just outgrown it, or maybe it's like, okay, well, we can just add functionality. We can use a different piece to add new stuff, but we can still use this old stuff for maybe like managing stock and accounting on the back end or something, because maybe that's a really difficult thing for you to change. So you say maybe you can put the two together. So you're not doing a data migration, you're just integrating and passing stuff between the two of them. It overlaps. Oftentimes you have to do data transformations and things like that, but that's a different thing because that's going to be ongoing.
Yeah,
that has to happen all the time to keep syncing stuff up, whereas a data migration you just do once and then you shut the old site down and you forget about it. Or you might do it a couple times, but you're going to do it a very finite amount, then you're going to stop and you're going to shut down the old system.
Well, I can see it making sense, like if you have, an accounting part of your business and you have, 3 accountants and they're unwilling to change. They use a certain piece of software, a certain way they do it, and they're just not going to change to, the new way. You're probably just going to be like, hey, let's not migrate everything and make them use this new system. Let's keep them on this old system, do an integration so at least they don't have to change. It makes sense for them, et cetera. And I guess the last thing that it makes sense to cover, since we're kind of just talking what is a migration, let's maybe just touch on like what is a migration to Drupal with like what we have already done. I know we've touched on that on like episodes before, but like what does the Drupal migration do? Like, is it just matching it to a Drupal site? Is it matching it to Drupal commerce? What does that kind of look like?
It's both. It's matching it to a Drupal site, and then there are specifics for Drupal commerce as well. And so it's basically doing, like we said, it's taking that input data of some sort, it's doing a bunch of transformations, and it's putting it into Drupal. And we have a bunch of things that have existing transformations and mappings done up, but we can also build new mappings and transformations for stuff that we haven't done before, either custom sites or platforms we don't currently support.
And which are the ones that we support right now?
We can do UberCart, Drupal Commerce, Magento, Shopify, and WooCommerce.
Right on.
Oh, and that's Magento 1 and 2.
Okay, got it. Well, I think that kind of makes sense to kind of conclude just what is a migration. So what do you say the too long didn't read of today's episode is?
A migration to Magento. is it's moving your data over. It's not necessarily replatforming. It's an important step of replatforming, but replatforming is a whole different project.
Right on. Well, if you have any questions about migrating, or what is a migration, or even if you're trying to figure out whether or not you need to migrate, we're happy to answer your questions below. Make some comments if you have anything to talk about this video.
You can check out our blog at acromedia.com. You can follow us on Facebook, and you can follow me on Twitter.